Can you get a hair transplant done without finasteride? In this video, we will talk about why we have to consider the worst case for your hair loss in the situation, how many grafts you really have available, and the truth about the safe zone inside the donor area zone that everyone misses. My name is Jesse and I had a hair transplant done and went my hair from looking like this to looking like this. I've also helped over 300 men to overcome the hair loss as well. And in this video series, I'm telling you everything you have to know about how to choose the right hair transplant clinic for you and how to keep your hair for the rest of your life. If you have any specific questions, click the link in the description below, book a call, and I'll see you there. But let's start with the video. In the world of hair transplant, there are many men who want a hair transplant done but don't want to take finasteride. And this video will not talk about finasteride specifically because that requires its own video by itself, but I am going to talk about your situation and what it will look like if you don't maintain your hair. When you are in this situation, you will very likely think like, oh, I will get a hair transplant done now, and if I have more losses in the future, I will get one or multiple hair transplants in the future to cover up the further losses. And that is very easy to assume, but let's talk about the problem we are actually solving. Because if you are here, you are very likely dealing with androgenic alopecia. And androgenic alopecia is also called male pattern baldness, but basically it means that you have a genetic progressive disorder, which means that it's genetic because it's passed on from your family from either side. It's progressive and it will get worse over time, and it's a disorder because it's not meant to happen. So just remember that it will get worse with time and you don't really know where it will end up or where it will stop actually. Only the hairs in the donor area at the back of your head will survive. And then the next question in your head is, if your donor area is resistant and I will keep it forever, do I have enough to cover everything? Do I have enough to cover all the losses? So let's talk about the donor zone specifically. The average healthy donor area has around 7,000 to 10,000 available grafts to be extracted. Most clinics say around 8,000, so let's take that as a safe number. But the issue is that this number completely depends on the skills of the clinic, and the harsher they harvest you, the less they can take in the future before it starts to become really obvious, because the more density you remove and the more hair transplants you do, the more damage it leaves behind. So let's run through the entire scenario. So with Norwood 7, you have complete hair loss except for like the normal horseshoe pattern that we all know. But if you want to recover this, how many grafts would it actually take? Well, first, to really recover a hairline, you're gonna need around 2,500 grafts, like at the least, but I'm just gonna keep it as conservative. Then there's also the crown to think about, and many people think that the crown is a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to deal with, but the downside is that the crown is also known as the black hole of hair transplant, and you can put so many grafts in there. So to be conservative, I will say that you need around 3,000 grafts to really fill it up. But the problem is that your hairline and crown isn't the entire equation. There's also the area in between, which can easily fall out as well. So that's gonna add at least 2,000 grafts in total. If you add up everything, that will amount to around 7,500 grafts in total. And that sounds amazing, right? Like that is just at the limit or just below the limit of what is possible within your donor zone. But there is another problem to consider. The first thing is that you really want to space out these type of hair transplants. If you instantly get 7,500 done, then the ultimate yield will be lower. And because you want to have it done by a reputable clinic, it's also going to cost you quite a bit of money. And even on the low end, let's assume that it's costing you $5,000 per hair transplant, but it's times 3, so it's gonna cost you around $15,000 in total. And I don't know about you, but $15,000 for me is a lot of money, and I'm not sure if that is worth it to you. So let's go back to that original number of 7,500 grafts. And you may think like, oh, that is absolutely amazing. That is just the maximum of what I can get, and then problem solved forever. Right? It's not really that simple, unfortunately. That's because androgenic alopecia is a genetic disorder, and we have to assume that you will end up as a Norwood 7 because you are not maintaining. So if you are a Norwood 7 and you need the 7,500 grafts to fix your situation, then you also have to consider that the clinics that perform the work on you also need to extract 2,500 grafts every single time. And the clinics that really push for these type of graft numbers can also really easily take outside of the actual safe zone. So what is the safe zone really? Well, I'm gonna put a picture up right here so you can see what the safe zone actually is. And like you see, the safe zone is way smaller than you may have thought before. So with androgenic alopecia, if it's progressing really far, then it will keep going until like north of the safe zone, so towards the crown, and south of the safe zone, so towards the neck. And in between that is the actual safe zone, and that is the zone where you can take those type of hairs, and those are the hairs that are actually resistant, and those are the hairs that will very likely keep with you for the rest of your life. But when you are dealing with clinics that need to extract 2500 grafts every single time because you are paying for it and you want it, then they don't really care about that safe zone anymore. It's very easy for them to overstep it. And in most cases, that doesn't really matter because the patient is actually maintaining. Because if you are maintaining, then that is still just a safe zone. But if you're not maintaining, that can become a danger zone. And maybe you are at this part of the video and think like, well, I think the risk still applies to me and I'm fine with taking a risk myself. Well, let's walk through that. So what will happen actually in the end? Well, in the end, you will end up with at least 15K in hair transplant costs if you want to have it done by a reputable clinic, because you don't want to have to do it all at once, because that just destroys your yield. You will also have a very limited donor area with lots of scars. And you will have a very thin donor area because of the extraction or maybe even over harvesting. And so good luck hiding those scars. And you will also very likely experience more losses because of the losses in the unsafe areas and lose parts of your actual hair transplant in the end. And if you don't really like your looks at the end, you will have to shave it off anyway. And maybe you're thinking about this video and think like, well, I just want my hair for the next 10 years, next 20 years. I don't really care about spending that kind of money and then having to shave it off anyways. But the issue is that we are really bad at predicting this kind of stuff. I see it nearly every week on Reddit where someone used to be in the same shoes. They just wanted the hair for the next decade or 2 decades. And then after that, they didn't care anymore. But by the time they actually reach that age, they reach that time, then they decide that they still want to keep their hair. And so don't assume that you only will care about your hair for just a couple decades. It's just the best to assume that you want to keep it like now, like it is for the rest of your life. And so circling back to the final question, actually the first question, can you get a hair transplant done without finasteride? You can absolutely get a hair transplant done, but it will not last. You will likely experience further losses and you will throw away lots of money in the process. So I would highly recommend that if you are on the fence, just get on finasteride, just get on the Dutasteride, do anything you can to at least maintain your hair, because in the best case, that will just ensure that your hair transplant journey will be a whole lot cheaper. Maybe you only need 1 hair transplant instead of 3. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about hair transplant, leave them below and I'll see you in the next video.